So I do identity. There wasn't a lot about identity at Build, but Agent ID, obviously one of the important things. So Agent ID is non-human identities. Each agent has an identity. It can be audited. It has permissions. It can do conditional access. As you get a complete log and you can control what your agents do so you don't get rogue agents. And we now have SDK and execution containers. So basically they run within strictly defined boundaries. But there wasn't that much about identity, but anyway. So what I did is I watched some of the more kind of fun ones because we've got all these other speakers that are going to drill deeper for you. So one of the things is enter external ID. We've now got passkey support. We've got migration. Migration is huge. I have people who are using B2C who want to move to enter external ID. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Which way is it going? Hang on. Here we go. Okay, so Majorana 2, that was a really interesting talk, which is quantum computing. That is their new chip, which does magic stuff. I don't pretend to understand it, but that is the chip that is basically the future of quantum computing for Microsoft. And if you're really interested in learning more about it, they've just published a paper which describes that chip that you've just seen. And the paper is called 20-second parity lifetime in an ESA-PB Tetron device. So, I mean, I don't even understand the title, but anyway, it was a really interesting talk, and go and watch it if that's what you're interested in. Okay, and then we have two guys who always talk at Build, Scott Hanselman, who's the VP of Developer Relations, and Mark Revzinich, who is the VP of Azure. He is the CISO for security. He's also an Azure Technical Fellow, and they do some really, really funny talks. So in this presentation, Scott and Mark learned to vibe check. They got 4 developers to present to them on their product that they used, and they had to decide whether it was AI slop. In other words, they told AI to do something and it just churned out some stuff, and well, that's what it did. Or whether you use vibe coding, so it's kind of running the main thing, or whether it's augmented. So basically, are you using Copilot as almost like a peer programmer? So the first guy, a really fascinating talk, he developed a hallucinating Oz. So it's an operating system, but it doesn't have any apps at all. So if you say, I want to use a calculator, it knows what a calculator looks like, right? It's because it's seen calculator. So it spins up a calculator on the fly with plus buttons and stuff, and you can do all your stuff, and when you're finished, it disappears, right? If you want to do Notepad, it knows what Notepad does. So it spins up a Notepad, and you do Notepad, and then it disappears. It doesn't have any apps in it. It's just like magic. And so I don't know if any of you can remember Encarta. Encarta was a Microsoft product on a DVD that was kind of the same as, an encyclopedia. So they said, build me an Encarta that only goes up to the year 2000. So when it spun up a whole Encarta system that you could Google like a encyclopedia, but you couldn't ask it any questions after 2000 because that was the limit of its knowledge. So a really fascinating talk. I'm still trying to get my head around it. And the next lady that stood up developed a whole database in the browser, and she only used CSS. Okay. And so Mark Revzinich's first question was, why? Why would you do this? And she said, oh, I love CSS. So that's what she did. She built this whole thing, and really quite a fascinating talk. And the other two were really just apps, that they presented. What's happened here? Do I pull it? Does it do this? Is it coming back now? Yes, no. Hang on. Okay, sorry. So, but what's really other interesting thing is that this presentation had adverts. Now, I've watched many, many builds, and I've never seen a build with adverts. So I don't know if that's the sign of the future. It's not a good sign, but they had adverts. Okay, and then Mark Revzinich does a kind of a speech where he talks about what's happening in Azure, things in the future. So this section that he's talking about is stuff in the future, stuff they're working on. This might never, ever come to production. This is an idea. And so we have, at the moment, we want high speed, we use copper, but high speeds use data loss. So we have to shorten their distances, which is not what we want. On the other hand, we've got fiber, which is super cool and high speed, but it's very, very hot, uses a lot of energy, and we don't want that, you know. So one of the things they're looking at is Project Mosaic, which basically uses lots and lots of low-speed fiber. Okay? And this is so many channels operating at a low speed. And so the idea is that you use micro-LED arrays. So those are the arrays that you get in things like smart glasses. And you've got some imaging filters. And on the other side, you've got a camera. So you can imagine you've got the cable and you've got all the fibers. So each fiber could be a dot, right? So you could make stuff with it. And so they gave this demo. Their research lab is in Cambridge in the UK. And so what they did is from the one side, they typed the letter Z, and then the letter Z came up, like if you think of it as building as dots across this really low speed fiber network. So this might never ever see the light of day, but it's one of the many, many things that they're looking at. And then we had a talk from Scott and Mark about how they reshape software engineering. So they talked about Project Lobster, and they had 17 engineers, pull requests, lines of code, all kinds of stuff. And this has now gone public, and I've just forgotten the name of it. The agent that runs.
Scout?
Sorry? Scout. Yeah, that's it. So this is now Scout, right? It was called Project Lobster. Now this is what you know as Scout. 2.7 million lines of code written with the help of AI. So it wasn't just slop, it was actually augmented, using it, checking it, running it. And that kind of shows you what you can do when you use it properly, when you use AI properly. And one of the other things that Scott Hanselman does is he writes all these little tools, and so does Mark Russinovich. And so they've made a place. If anyone's written a little utility that you're quite proud of and you want to put it up in the world to share, you can put it up here, Tiny Tooltown. And there's about 451 at the moment, and it's growing. Go and put it up there. Put in your stuff, let other people use it, get some feedback. This is not for CMS systems. This is for some tiny little thing that does one thing well that you use that maybe you think other people would like. Okay, and then, so this is one of the things that we're talking about. If you remember back to the days of 2001, A Space Odyssey, this is talking to AI. So you say to the AI, open the pod doors, Hal. And he says, of course, Dave, I've opened the pod doors. Just tell me if there's anything else I can do. And you say, Hal, the pod doors aren't open. He says, good catch, that's what AI does. Well, when you asked me, I didn't do it, but I'm going to do it now. Yes, Hal, open the pod doors. No problem, the pod doors are now open. Hal, the pod doors are still closed. You're absolutely right, Dave. And if you've ever used AI, that's exactly what it does, right? It apologizes, it tells you. So I thought that was really funny. Now, one of the other things they talked about was the fact that in the old days, last year, we got interns, and they got all simple jobs to learn how to code, right? And they started. Now the problem is all the simple jobs are now being done by AI, right? So what are interns doing? How does interns become senior? Because you can see there from the graph, the number of interns that are being employed is steadily declining, which means that in 10 years' time, there's not going to be any seniors. So so they had a whole discussion about that. And they wrote a paper, and so what they were talking about was every era has something that defines it. So back in the day of mainframes, everyone wrote assembler, right? There was nothing to help you. You just wrote assembler, and there were no tools. And then we got IDEs, and you got IntelliSense. And then someone said IntelliSense rots the brain, right? Because IntelliSense, like, you don't have to think. And then we got Stack Overflow. So what happens when you got Stack Overflow? You copy paste, right? And don't show me anyone who hasn't copy pasted shit from Stack Overflow, because everybody does it, right? And now we've got AI, and people are saying, oh, it's the end of coding, but it's just another part of that evolution that you can see. So back to the interns. If you're interested, they wrote a paper, Scott and Mark, called Redefining the Software Engineering Profession. So that's a solution they propose to upskill interns so that interns can progress even in the world of AI. So it's a really interesting paper, and I recommend you go and read it. because that's their little brainstorm about how, and this is the kind of thing that they're going to be doing within Microsoft. Okay, so to sum up at their presentation, which again I recommend you go and watch, basically programming the craft didn't die, it just moved up a level. From writing code, now we own the outcomes. Okay, and now I'm going to hand off to Sinan.
So what I've done is I need to choose normally a breakout session, but instead of that, what I've done is I ask Cowork to build me a session for me. Then as an extra, I said, also give me the talking points so I can present. So let's see how that's gonna go. So, and I'm not well prepared. Let's see. So it's kind of like a good experiment because a lot of talk was about agents, and these are the current statistics. They probably already changed because GitHub Copilot got more expensive, and probably that might go down a bit. But originally I was going to talk about just breakout 2 or 3, but then I asked Cowork, hey, give me all the, I bring all the presentations slides and I put all of them into Cowork. I'm like, create a story and give me a combined slide deck. I'm not going to be able to go all of it, and I probably have just 10 minutes. But yeah, so first thing it did was creating this story about that 5 unrelated sessions into one pipeline, 5 vantage points. So in breakout 2 or 3, I forget their name right now, but they show the capabilities of Copilot, GitHub Copilot CLI, and mostly CLI they stayed on. And then there was a session about Copilot SDK, which was 206, and GitHub Cowork was, okay, that can be related. You can build an app with Copilot SDK. Then for the structure, you can use agent harness about where your agent is gonna, work. And then, but you need some knowledge about your, you might need a knowledge, and you might have, Microsoft IQ or Foundry IQ or Fabric IQ can help with the knowledge part. And then also you can use Foundry to optimize. So it kind of creates this hallucinated storyline, I would say. But we focus on the CLI to PR part. So normally this is what the current work life cycle of a issue end-to-end these days. So we pick an issue, and we used to just work and copy paste from Stack Overflow. Now we ask Copilot to write it. And yesterday there was an hour or 2 of a window that Copilot was down. And in my company, everyone was like, okay, let's go back to start writing code again. So I don't know if you guys see that. It was scary. Like we were like, oh, how we write loop, But Copilot worked really well, especially since last September. I'm really happy with if you use correct way of Copilot, custom prompts or skills, work really well. Then you can push the branch, then open a pull request, and CI validates your basics. You can run some tests, and team reviews edge cases and merge on a machine with a human confidence. But why this matters? We already start putting AI into it, but there are more you can do. And Copilot can help with most of the part with this. Who use Copilot CLI? All right, that's good. I hope you guys are enjoying it, because I love terminal user interfaces. And as soon as they dropped this big banner, I was like, I love it. Every time I run Copilot, I do Copilot --banner --YOLO, because you only live once, right? So, so what come with the Copilot CLI is it is headless. you can do headless automation with the CI, but it's interactive assistance, but focus on more prompt than the, instead of your VS Code lifecycle. So you mostly communicate with the agent, and you can use slash commands, or slash commands is mostly skills these days, or pre-provided tools, I would say. So it is really interesting. They did a session. They did a live coding with Copilot CLI. So you can reach your issues because it is using GitHub Copilot SDK under the hood, and also it can reach it's using your session, so it can see your issues and pull requests. It can manage those for you as well. So these are example, like this probably already out of date. They start with this. These are the models you can use. I don't know if Fable is there, but we can't use it anymore. I don't know if you guys see the Fable drama. So mostly I prefer 5.4 in a high context window, because others are expensive and it get expensive. But these are you can run the Copilot with this command directly choose it, or when you're in a session, you can use slash model command, or you can set environment variable and it will always start with it, or you can set a configuration file. So, and skills. Who use skills right now? Cool. More skill user than Copilot CLI user. So normally when we start having the GitHub Copilot as one of the tools, like agentic tools, we were writing our own prompts, and then we have custom prompt files, then we start having agents. But I think with MCP and skills, we start using default agents in the local development environment and start using skills more. So this is an example skill, a review skill they are doing. So, and where it can load is, it can load from parent directories. You can have, there's multiple versions of skills. There's like cloud version, open code version, GitHub Copilot, and that can live on your repository level, or on your project level, or it can live in your personal directory level. There is all sort of stuff. But they are, if you guys don't use, it's really useful to go. Built-in agents, that's something I want to go. I'm going to skip this one because I want to talk about plan mode, autopilot. These two are really fun. Who use plan mode? Like, do you guys know? You should use, yes. So, have you guys heard spec-driven development before? So there was a big, I think it's still active project. There's a spec kit come from one of the guys from GitHub. He moved to, I think, Anthropic recently. He's on top of the MCP team. Spec kit was focusing on the specs or requirement first, then using custom skills that come with the spec kit to implement those in an iterative and agentic approach. And there's also OpenSpec is another version and from open source competitor maybe. And Copilot plan mode does the same thing. So when you're on CLI, you can just do Shift Tab and go to plan mode. And what it does is it creates a plan and put in your session directory plan.md, as far as, if I'm not wrong. That's nice. I don't know what's happened there. And then when you put a proper prompt about, like, what you want to plan about, like, hey, let's write a to-do application with Angular and .NET and put an Aspire as an example. That's what I'm going to do when I have my free time. And then as soon as it's done, it can ask you, hey, should I go and implement it in an, agent mode, or do you want to do something else? So plan mode is really powerful. And then you can directly switch to autopilot mode. Sorry.
When there are any adds and changes, or somebody says, oh, have you considered using this? So therefore you could sidestep it. Would you actually add it to the plan, or would you really restructure and redo the whole thing?
So there's two approach I take. So plan mode here is using the plan.md on your session level. So when you get out of the session and when you come back, you might lose that session unless you explicitly resume that session that GUID is being generated. So what I do is I ask my agent to create a specs or requirements that I have as part of my repository. So I create like a docs or requirements. And then if I already implement, I can go and say, okay, this feature has changed. Please, either create a new feature. So because it's iteratively, so then it can work on it. And what I start doing as well, when I work on those plans that, for example, I have like 10 requirements, I ask agent to, I explicitly ask agent when I'm creating a requirement, dependencies specifically defined in like a top level markdown file in that folder. So when I go to fleet mode knows which ones are not dependent and can work on those, which is actually, yeah, so fleet mode is there. They bring a couple of extra stuff. I'm not sure how new these are, these slash comments. So with /PR and /PR, you can open and manage pull requests. PR stands for pull request. I'm not going to go about research. You guys go do its homework. Review is an interesting one. So there's a rubber duck comment as well and review comment. So review comment spin up a sub agent and run 3 sub agent in different models and collect and validate the outputs. Rubber ducks do this similar as well. And I'm not 100% sure about what is difference. I try rubber duck multiple times. I use rubber duck, but I didn't try the review mode. But I'm using experimental and fleet mode a lot. I should probably stop talking soon. Fleet mode is when you start your command with a /fleet, it analyzes your prompt and it create a plan and then attack that issue if it can create multiple sub-agents. If it's like there's a way it can work on multiple things. And actually, in your session, it creates a SQLite database and track those issues as well. So for each session, you might have a small database there. Experimental is something I want to show, is a lot of experimental features. One of them is a new TUI they bring. So this is the new one, very different than previous one. And on your repository, you can see your session, current session, and you can see your issues, pull requests, and gists. The reason we have session there is because there is, I think, /clear the context of the current session, but there's another one is called /new. So one of the feedback they got apparently is, I just realized I didn't go through even BRKey 203 though. When you work on multiple different ideas on the same app, people were creating like multiple 5-6 different terminals and running it. They solved that with this new /session. So when you run /new, it creates a new session, and you can use /sessions to manage your multiple session in the same TUI. And with this experimental feature, you can switch between sessions. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to put these slides and also talking points, which I didn't follow, onto the repository. Before,
Sorry, Jerome's not here yet.
I don't know who is next.
Jamie can just jump on.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
But before that, I want to show something, which is this. So if you guys scan this is the repository we're going to publish out of resource by Monday. We have some stuff there. We have a localhost event happening tomorrow. So where does it take you is, it takes you to this repository. So we are doing some talks today. We have a sessions tomorrow, and we're gonna put some resources here about 3 labs. You're not gonna be able to run the labs as it's been explained here, but you can follow those from here, the content.
Click on that.
And we're gonna run some of these labs from here. So if you go to, for each lab and breakout, there are some repositories like a GitHub resources, and you can, for example, I'm gonna run, or I think it was 520. I'm gonna run this one. So what you guys can do when you have time, this is about using models in Foundry and building an AI application. You can follow the steps here and run these labs yourself on your free time. You will need an Azure subscription and a couple of skill set, but Copilot work really well, or ChatGPT as well. And especially this one works really good. You just need to be a bit patient. No, it's not. No, I mean, the repositories are free, but you will need Azure credit. But for Azure credit, you can just I mute myself, get another email and $200 for whatever month it is, or use your company's resources on the weekend. So our next, do you want to?
Did everyone get the QR code? On that repo, just under the link that Sanan showed you, there's actually another video which is build in 2 minutes. Because I really like the top points of build in 2 minutes. So that's really worth watching.
So this repository belongs to an organization, not this one, this one. Sorry, I couldn't click. So this is our organization for this user group. So we will start sharing more stuff here, and you can create a discussion if you want to have a talk, anything about it, or you want to join. I'm gonna shut up.
I start. Does anyone in this room uses Microsoft Fabric? A little bit,
Who is hiring?
a lot. I'll let you know what latest announcement in Microsoft Build. So on Microsoft Fabric, it's essentially in the past, it's a Power BI reporting tool, but right now we have established to more data engineering, data science, and it has much of a capability that you can build apps on Fabric as well. In the past, that if you're building apps, you might take 6 months to create all your Azure Web Services, your Microsoft Entra ID on Azure in order to populate your app. And you need to go through all the design in terms of web interface to make sure that it's what you want on your app. The recent announcement for Project Raven on Microsoft Fabric, essentially you're able to deploy applications. And Raven is essentially a backend as a service. So it's an open source SDK and CLI that you can use on VS Code or Copilot CLI. You could use it on the latest announcement from Build as well, the GitHub Copilot app. So essentially, you can also use it on Claude. So you can use it various because it's a open source SDK. And behind the scenes, it uses TypeScript for all the decorator, for the entities. I'll show you later how it works in terms of the template. Before we dive into more technical, I'll probably show you a couple of apps that I've built for the weekend, and you can have a look. Just come. Haven't used Fabric before. Fabric, you would be able to toss in your data and store everything in Fabric as your semantic model. And semantic model, you then configure all your business logic, your data set, depending on what your DAX measures as well in semantic model. Then you surface it to your Power BI report. With Raven, what I've built is that I've built an app that basically builds on top of your semantic model. Essentially, this one, I'm not using the BI report anymore. I'm just using Raven as the interface. You can see some of the colors, the visual. I couldn't really actually do Power BI, but with Raven and GitHub Copilot, I am able to just use natural language, prompt, say what I want. Do I want a light mode? Am I a dark mode person? Or do I want to give flexibility to my team to have different UI across it, different card visual? Some of those currently is not achievable on Power BI report. So it's pretty good to see very thin, and then you can build on top of the semantic model that you already have in your workspace. So in this case, for example, I could filter through the brands. What I can do is I can also send out email based on the website as well. Once I click email, the Outlook will be populated and it has basically a template to what I want to send. Just quickly show you an example. Actually, would a window like that to say that who is the distributor. For example, in this case, it's by Apple, and I say hi to the supply person who's in charge of that purchase order. We need to perhaps order a certain amount of the Apple iPad, and what's the quantity that I need to order, and what's the store that I want to send it to. Essentially, if you are distributor or retailer, you could use the Rayfin app with your semantic model that you have hosted behind the scene, and you can use this app to send either Outlook messages, but obviously someone needs to come to this app and click on this UI and send out to the thing is that you can create multiple pages as well within your HTML. So everything is basically hosted under a HTML, and you can change all the pages. What do you want to be shown in your pages? It could be a page for your managers or your marketing managers to see what are some of the top selling products. So one of them I created on an existing semantic model that I already have in place in my company. Another one that I've created is, now that the FIFA World Cup is happening, what I've done is I've basically just created a dashboard to show what countries are playing, and each country I've just created a player card. So, for example, what are the players? What is the strength? I'm just playing around. I use GitHub Copilot. I'm not storing anything in my semantic model. Nothing I'm storing. It's just calling through APIs. As long as you have the key or it's a public API that you want to, you will be able to do that. And even all the photos is also sourced through API. When you use GitHub Copilot, you might figure that some things that might not be working or not what you want. And you can also just give Copilot the commands. Example, you might also have created a wireframe or you want to design in your website. What I've done is that I find it really useful is I just copy and paste in terms of my website that I've already set up in my wireframe, what I want it to be, the layout and everything. I just paste it in GitHub Copilot and it's able to create this dashboard for me. So in the past, when I created it, the color wasn't nice at all. The player cards wasn't visually. So I did a wireframe, and then after that, I just copy and paste and say with the existing data that I've already created, please use this design on top of it. So probably give it a go and try it out in your own time as well. Another one I've also created is this one I just did it probably less than an hour. I just created the Rayfin command. After that, I just told Pilot, please create me an earthquake monitoring tool. What this does is that this one, I'm not storing anything on my space, on my SQL database or anything. It's just calling with an open API and it's doing a approach. Every 5 seconds, this dashboard gets updated. So in a way, this one is more of a real-time dashboard. Within the last 24 hours, it shows me the region, what's happening, and some of the magnitude of earthquake that has happened, and I understand in terms of this app. Another thing that you can think of is, I did find something quite interesting. Someone has built it online. Gives you a bit of the retro perspective. I just refresh this app. Everything is actually running HTML. Use some of your memories on Windows XP, how it looks like. This is just not a generic Windows XP for one. What I did was I also connected to a semantic model. So I do have a semantic model that runs behind the scenes, but sort of you can see with Rayfin, you can do any interface that you want in your own team with some of the designs that you might find creative. There's also this MSN Messenger. So this one is not a DAI agent. This one runs behind the scenes. It's a semantic model with the that I've already done it. So for example, I do have just 5 category that when you click it, the data agent would respond with the actual DAX measure, what's happening with the semantic model, what's the best region, what's the total revenue, and so on. But this is not a data agent, it's just running behind the scenes the DAX query. In terms of your business use case, why would organization be using Rayfin? It could be time to deployment, to production. It would take shorter time as well. What I've done is in terms of real-time simulation, a lot of organizations currently, you might not have a real-time monitoring tool. So for example, if the organization, in this case, what I've done is I have created my own ice cream factory. I hope everyone in this room like to eat ice cream. Otherwise, a bit of a waste of what I've done. So what I've done here is that I have actually created a 3D modeling in my Rayfin tool. So before I set up everything, I created my 3D modeling. Don't really study anything on 3D, but I find it pretty easy to do with AI these days. What I want is that the one that I want, the concept and everything, and basically trial and error with what I've done. And it's pretty powerful that I'm able to create something any knowledge to start with. So I've created this 3D modeling and the ice cream production. Each of the production, it gives me a bit of the production line, what I want. So the first one is the cone production with ice cream, cone, steak, and top as well. And I could zoom in my Rayfin app. Also tell me in terms of real-time data flowing. So you can connect to your real-time data if you have set up correctly. You can click to that line to understand what is the throughput, how many minutes, what has been produced. On top of that, I do have the truck as well. Right now, I do need to fix a bit of the bug. If you realize my truck is actually reversing rather than normal, but this is some sort of things that you can fix.
They're backing in to get the orders.
Yes, it's traversing, right? So what happened is this truck, I've given names to it. It's all dummy data that what truck is dispatching what products, how much is the load on the truck. So in a way, you can actually monitor it real-time data, what's happening. And in your Rayfin app, you can play with the modeling. Internet right now, I see a lot of, for example, if you're in the energy sector, you could also build a really nice wind turbine to show what is the telemetry as well. There's a lot of things that you can do in terms of Rayfin app. The thing that probably is much simple interface rather than something that's so complex that you need to really model. We should think about use cases on Rayfin app, or what can you actually deploy? Why do you need to deploy apps on Fabric? What's the purpose of it? So essentially, if you already have data that is stored in your Microsoft Fabric, you might already created a SQL database behind the scenes, and you might already have other reports. If you're using Translytical task flow on your Power BI report, you would notice that sometimes when you submit it and write back to your SQL database, there would be some lagness as well. So what Rayfin does is that it removes that lagness. When you look into the in your database, you can just on accept job, for example, in this case, what I've done here is a technician dashboard. So I've created this app. There's 2 views to it. One is to the technician. So right now I've already signed into this dashboard, this app. It also works with your Entra ID as well. So if you want security in place, you will be able to create the authentication on the app. So anyone, if it's someone that is trying to authenticate, if they do not have access, then they won't be able to access your app. Now, this is the technician view. What I've done is that I've created multiple work orders, and then view details, it shows me what is the job that is currently unassigned, and the customer details, what's the schedule time, the task, the address. And for me as a technician, I look at this job, I might be quite keen to do this job because currently it's not assigned. And then I could do skills. I have the skills to replace door handles and so on. I've just clicked accept job. That's where I start the job. I'll just for some time. Say I've just accepted this job, and behind the scenes, the SQL database gets the right back. So now I'm assigned to this task already. I could say that I want to start work right now. And then after that, it says that in progress for this job. If I want to do some follow-up, I could click on this follow-up as well. It needs follow-up, so the title gets changed. Otherwise, if I've completed this job, I can just mark done, and this job is no longer appearing and it is completed. Another interface that the manager can, so who can also write and create orders. So there's another interface that I've created for manager perspective. If they create this manager, they would be able to add the customers as well. So in this case, for example, right now I've just added a name, Ben, and I've just assigned it to an address. I want to do some painting. I'll just leave everything as it is. I don't need any notes or follow-up. I'll just create the order. So band 22 Viaduct address, if I scroll down, I'll be able to see that Ben appears on the board as the manager who is going to input all the jobs. And then this way, the technician, on the other hand, would be able to see that the manager has inputted the customer spend and then the address and what's the cost. From a technician perspective, they would be able to then assign job to themselves and basically do the task. So in terms of a company's perspective, to you, depending on your use case, if it's something that's more internal that you use perhaps using Power Apps to create your app, right now it sits within Fabric and you can create everything on Fabric as well. Your OneLake is already has all your data set that you have created and it sits closer to your storage. Might be quite curious as to what is behind the scenes. How does the SDK work or the template? What does it mean on that part? Let's quickly show you what it entails. So within the template itself, Raven, a command line that you just terminal. Once you have run it on your terminal or your VS Code, you would be able to choose 3 templates. Currently, there's this blank app that you can choose or your data app. So data app is essentially what you have already on your semantic model. You can just apply on top of it. The blank app is you're starting from 0. So if you're starting to build a new app, it entails is that the blank app would have child items. That is your SQL database. Yes.
Could you go back one slide?
And so it's up to you what template you want to choose. You can do it on the Fabric UX as well, but I find it's much of a user better experience if you do it from the CLI. You start from 0. Once you have picked all this template, for example, if you're starting from 0, you want to do a blank canvas, and it would have the attach the SQL database behind the scenes. After that, you can pick your project name and then pick the workspace that you want to deploy your app. The middle part, you see that what the template includes. So depending on what skills you have used, if you use any that is make your interface nicer, once that skill, it would also store under that agent guide. The MCP flows, if you're using any engineering notebook, Fabric, Power BI, MCP, you'll be able to see that it is included as well. It has all the config file on the YAML. What is your URL? What are you allowing the data set? And some of the words as well. On the sample code libraries, so the entities, the decorators are being stored in a TypeScript format. I haven't really used TypeScript and I find it pretty good when I look at the template. It also teaches me how to write script essentially and how to understand how structure works as well. After that, once you're happy with the template, you would be able to use and interact with GitHub Copilot or any tools that you're using. For example, Claude, you could be using. You would be able to interact with it and tell or GitHub Copilot what you're trying to install. After that, the whole template would accordingly. What I've done is every time when I'm trying to generate the template or running an app, just attach it with my registry so that anything that gets updated, I then commit and sync back to my. So everything is the latest and updated, and if to the previous version, I could do so as well. Any questions before I move on to the next one?
Because the very first efforts, how many efforts, for example, to migrate existing and like Power Apps.
So efforts, it really depends on where your data is stored. Is it on Dataverse? Is it on SQL database? Power Apps Dataverse? So if you want to do,
Yeah, current one Power Apps,
Power Apps.
like they are.
Yeah.
And let's say just to migrate them into Microsoft Power.
Microsoft Fabric Raven app would, so basically, essentially, you need to probably migrate your data over first. You can create shortcuts from Dataverse to Fabric. Once you have blended everything on one lake, so Fabric, we call the storage layer as one lake. Once you have saved everything under one lake, you have done all your modeling, what you want to do, your tables and everything. Then Fabric, Raven, and then tell Raven what you want to do. Essentially, you can either copy or paste of your existing Power Apps interface. If you do not want to use your existing interface, you wanted something that's updated, nicer, customer have come back to you to say they want this button in place, you can also do that. You can copy and paste with your existing interface, chuck it on GitHub Copilot. It would then wire up your existing interface and you can add more details or functionalities that you want. Effort, I would say, you have set everything correctly. I would say within a day, you'll be able to do so, but it does take you some effort to make sure that the agent is running and your Dataverse, your connectivity, everything is fine, and you have loaded all the tables. If your Dataverse tables has quite a big storage, then it might take some time, but if you do shortcut, it's like just a virtual reference to your Dataverse storage.
After you get into Copilot stage, you are generally giving your prompts to Copilot, right? On VS Code as an example.
Yeah.
So you can take a screenshot of your existing app
I
and
forgot about shortcuts.
put it there, I guess.
Multiple ways on how you want to build, or you can just migrate everything to one lake. It's up to you if you still want to use Dataverse. Dataverse storage would be a different costing, but if you want to do everything within Fabric, I would probably suggest that you migrate everything to and not paying both sides on the storage.
Question. And you mean to say that all of that is going to happen via agentic, via Copilot?
So for example, if you want to migrate everything from Dataverse to one lake, then you probably need to do it manually. You need to set up all the configuration, the connection to make sure that the connection is working first. Once you have landed all your data on one lake, you have created your semantic model, then you would be able to use VS Code and everything agentic. Right.
Only manual thing is transferring the data
Yeah.
to one lake.
That's the
But
manual way, but these days you have MCP that you can just command and it can help you as well. Depending on how good you are with the MCP interactivity. But if you have MCP available on your VS Code that you're using, everything could be done in a
Then come on Monday, we have a GitHub user group and we can talk about agentic stuff. Still there as well.
My thing is, if you've already created your MCP through the template, surely isn't the plumbing automatically there?
would say is that thinking about this Raven at first, you probably want to make sure that your data lands correctly and you have created all the right tables one-to-one before we look into this Raven. Might be questioning how it works in terms of costing. So if you currently organization or yourself, you already have a Fabric capacity, it would fall under Fabric capacity. There's no extra cost. One lake storage would be still the same one lake storage with your existing semantic model. Everything works under one billing. In terms of other platforms, you might have several billings and also licensing as well that you need to consider personal licensing. But with Raven, once you have E5, you have license and you also have just to pay the existing Fabric capacity is included in there. That's security as well. So if you create your app within a workspace and Entra ID for the registration on the security part, the user is not in that workspace. They don't have the lowest permission. They won't be able to access your app. So when you create the template, it would ask you multiple configuration before you actually look into the template. It will ask you what is your project name, what workspace do you want it to be deployed. It will ask you your permission config as well. Do you want it to be Entra ID authenticated, or do you want public application that everyone can access to? Couple of things that you can choose before your whole
That's good.
Rayfit app is spin up. Basically, with the existing, a lot of organization, you're currently using Power BI and your semantic model is all hosted within Fabric. That's where it is much easier if you want to create an app, a low-value internal app that you probably want to surface, or even for your customers that you know that it's something that is easier to spin up. You can just use Rayfit on Fabric as well. Guys, that's pretty much of my demo and presentation for today. I'll pass on to the next presenter. Pretty much me.
Something right. Use on AKS or EKS or Kubernetes using. Raise your hands up. Right. Any AI workloads, Anning? You're not allowed to raise your hands because you, I know you guys. Using on AKS? Right. I'm talking to the right. One thing actually I was really excited about this build we had recently was this announce on how we're running agentic AI on AKS. It can be Kubernetes, but in this particular case, let's talk about AKS, of course. We had few announcements during this build session. And the reason why I say it's kind of a real interesting for people who are about to use or who are using AI on Kubernetes will provide you a pathway and guidance and prescriptive guidance and all these kind of patterns you can readily available to use. And I will share all these things. I only have very few slides, to be honest, and I really want to show how I use it recently. And one of the remarking presentation that this build session did at the end. In terms of AI workloads on Kubernetes, we all know that we have inference and serving type of workloads and training and fine tuning, agentic orchestration, right? So these are the three types of workloads that you will find when you are trying to run your own agentic AI platform on Kubernetes or any platform in this matter. Inference and serving, we have this CATIO and AI Runway. And for the training and fine tuning, Ray plus NAScale on Azure, which is preview, which was released last build, which was happened a couple of weeks back. Right. Then we have was agentic orchestration. We use like Scales, MCP, OpenClaw, etc.
Yeah, I ask you to maximize it so I can read
right,
small print. Thank you.
That's about that. I should have done that actually.
5 minutes.
If I can find my mouse pointer. Yeah. Right. right? And then let's jump into this for that technicality. um, this is actually the practitioners list checklist for AI Kubernetes. This is pretty much what we need to focus, and I will explain how I use this one for my current tier one financial organization project that I'm working on. I had a requirement for doing a discovery of workloads around 1,200 servers and applications around 150 to understand how they talk to each other, and then what we need to do to bring it to Azure. So this is like a data center exit project, and we were not allowed to run any kind of pooling inside that organization because this is, of course, the AI data and all this information data that sits on these applications. And then the only option that we had was creating something. Actually, we hadn't had any idea like what to create up until this came through. And what we did, we create this agentic AI form on top of AKS using the features that you're gonna have a look soon. We have these kind of that we took, like start with what Kubernetes basically gives you, and then we build the MCP skills on top of that agent. Also, we choose tooling that matches our versus buy posture. When we come to tooling, actually, we were using these Ray and NEScale on Azure. And when we are creating the build agent layer, we choose this on stack rather than renting one. Because we can't really rent one because this data should not go beyond their tenant. In that case, all the data sits on storage accounts, and then the AKS platform does the agentic AI discovery for these applications by itself. Then it kind of provides us a nice dashboards. I can't really share those dashboards information, but it is not that hard to be honest when we are to use those devices. That's actually the gist of it. Let's go into the demo. I would like to showcase what are the use cases that you can think of. This is what I could think of quickly. But beyond that, when you have agentic AI orchestration layer, beyond what you can think of actually, because it's managed, it's owned, governed, and it's scalable. And then you have the ability to control the models that you want to that particular platform to consume. So that's actually the kind of that overall checklist that you can follow through. And let's jump into the demo. Yeah, if you can kind of scan this and then have a look, and then it will have all the information which I'm just spoke about, and the Terraform codes and the GitHub repo and everything. It's just plug and play and give it a try and then see how it goes. Now let's see this actually being used at this point. Real world use cases. Much better from his sweet and buttery voice that he's presenting at this point.
can forward the.
Select your speaker to the HDMI.
Last 5 minutes of this particular nice presentation, which I benefit a lot. Let's quickly have a look.
Cloud providers publish MCP skills all the time, and you can interact with Azure using the AKS MCP server to interact with AKS using natural language. Okay, Substrate, and I'm getting low on time here, so I'm going to go through these announcements. So we've got a few announcements, 4 announcements today, spanning both single cluster, multi-cluster, and fleet, and we're going to walk through them. Okay, generally available, we have AKS Automatic. If you're using Automatic, it's the easiest way to get started with Kubernetes and AKS. But what we've done now is give you managed system node pools. So all the pods that need to run the Kubernetes components themselves, we now take care of managing that and scaling that. Why it matters for AI is you don't need to run those components on your GPU nodes.
That's exactly actually what really excites me, because you don't need to really run your GPU nodes.
So you want to milk every cycle out of to run your AI workload. So that's AKS Automatic with managed system node pools, GA today. Azure Container Linux, excited about this one. So we've given you the best of Azure and the best of Linux in Azure Container Linux. You get smaller attack surface area. We've curated the level of packages, smaller CVEs, and predictable fast patching cycles. We have transparent supply chains, so we package everything up, distribute it to the nodes so that you get predictable signed artifacts, predictable upgrade paths for regulated workloads, and then consistency across hosts. You can start this up for both in a container environment, on your VMs, or even in.
Small thing. This is actually the main reason that we were allowed to run this for this particular financial organization. Was actually the selling point in terms of approval point, in terms of allowing us agentic AI to run the application discovery across the whole fleet of the applications on-premise.
In WSL on your Windows machine as well. So we believe the OS layer in AKS should be invisible, secure by default, and consistent and out of your way. Okay, really excited about the public preview of AKS on bare metal. So this is direct hardware access from AKS to manage physical nodes, right? So we can actually install AKS on
I use this, right?
physical hardware with no hypervisor. So no virtualization layer for your workload, which is important for GPUs, NICs, and all the like of the specialized accelerated hardware. Same AKS control plane, different operational model, same operational model, sorry. And it matters for AI because you can extend AI to on-prem, other clouds, and have it inside Azure, and not pay the virtualization tax for your on-prem environment. So it allows you to scale very quickly. And finally, I'm really excited about this one. Clusters get really, really big really quickly. So you want to be able to be in a position where you can manage the fleet of clusters. Fleet for Arc-enabled clusters allows you to have progressive rollouts across clusters, intelligent workload placement for your workloads across different boundaries, environments, on-prem and on the edge. Consistent policy enforcement, so we're pushing the same policies to all environments at the same time, and it's Arc-enabled, so it's in the Azure, it has an identity in Azure, using the same control plane. So all AI workloads outgrow a single cluster very quickly. and this is how you stay ahead of that. Okay, so back to the full chooser. We've run the whole thing. I'm just going to finish up with 2 customers. I need just an extra 2 minutes here. I got too excited. So what this looks like in production, we're going to show you a couple of customer use cases. We actually have Royal Bank of Canada here who are leveraging Kaito in production. Their platform onboarding and deployment operator wraps the GPU resource provisioning into a CI/CD workflow that the developers run themselves. So it's a self-service deployment and it's secure by default. Kaito is used for the production model serving, workspace and AI models deployed as pods, and the model images are stored in the bank's ACR, which is Azure Container Registry. So the really important thing is we have a compliance perimeter. This is a bank, obviously, and they're utilizing things like Entra ID, Key Vault, private ACR, and their models are all their data stays inside their secure perimeter, their subscription and their boundary. And this is a really great example of how banks are utilizing tools like AKS on top of Kaito on top of AKS for model serving. Okay, one more before I finish up. This is really cool. Wave is rewriting the self-driving playbook. With end-to-end deep learning, and they're running that on AKS with Ray. So their driver, the AI driver, actually demonstrated autonomous driving in Tokyo only after 4 months. I lived in Japan for 4 years, and I still couldn't drive in Tokyo. So that beat me out. So with a brand new Nissan vehicle, they demonstrated learning on the go. So that kind of generalization required massive infrastructure and clusters, and they use AKS and Anyscale on Azure to connect thousands of GPUs into a flexible supercomputer for training and validation. And this training layer is pushed to its limits. The scale of the infrastructure directly determines how quickly they can iterate and train the models.
So you get the idea of how it all kind of fit together. And then the previous example that you showed, the Royal Bank of Canada, that was actually exactly what we did for this in particular case. And that's where the excitement comes in. It's right on time. And then we didn't really want to subscribe to any tools or really worry about all the small details. In this case, when we try to create that inference and training layer, we automatically actually try to understand as per the skills that we create, what's around that ecosystem and what subnet that it should reach to, and then what are the application inside that subnets, and then how they talk to each other and create them in a nice graphical presentation. So that's kind of how we use agentic AI case at this point, but I really encourage you to that you got that QR code which has this demo and all the code base that you can try out on AKS, and also any scale options that AKS provide at this point. And yeah, that kind of concludes my excitement with build. Technical that I had.
We all have, don't worry. Awesome. And Jerome will come back he just come from Wellington.
Some people have silly ideas, and mine was to run the build local host, or work on the build local host down in Wellington today, and then rush to the airport and then try and deal with Auckland traffic. I forgot how bad Auckland traffic actually is. So yes. Okay. Give me a quick moment to grab the right slides, and away we'll go from here. Okay, build. So in case you hadn't realized, a lot of build this year was about AI, because there's this funny thing, and it seems to be going on a little bit in the industry around us. And so what I wanted to sort of talk through is a little bit around the Microsoft Agent platform. So this was kind of a big theme that threaded through, and even some of the presentations so far have touched on aspects of that around how that works into things like Fabric and so forth from there. And so at the starting point, this concept of Microsoft talking about the agent platform is Microsoft leaning into what they've always done well, which is we have a big ecosystem. And so let's demonstrate and let's show the value that comes from integrating across the ecosystem rather than having to go and pick and choose vendors across different stacks in order to be able to do that. And so this is kind of that one end-to-end system. Microsoft have code in GitHub. I mean, who here is a developer or stores code in GitHub? Most of us, because it's the major platform. And for those that are still using ADO, you'll be there eventually. It's not going away just yet, but they're working on tighter integrations to help make that migration. And on the other side of it, who uses Exchange and SharePoint, OneDrive, all of that in a corporate? Apart from the odd crazy people like us who use Google, almost everybody uses the Microsoft 365 stack. So you've got the two ends that Microsoft already has, and then in the middle, how is Microsoft positioning that? But because of their relationship with developers and everything as well, there's the foundation of the framework. So we have the Microsoft Agent Framework, which went GA within the build as well, was announced as to GA, as being the foundation for actually then building those agents as well. And that framework is actually a big part of Microsoft's broader play in terms of where it is that you can be developing and building your agents. And depending on how we go for time, we might get into a very quick demo, which is just be some poking around the portal to show you some of the great stuff that's come out that Microsoft Agent Framework gives you for free from the foundations. And a big part of the discussion is this real understanding about we're moving AI from chatbot interfaces where we call it up at the time that we want it to moving towards true agentic workflows where an agent becomes part of the team, working alongside you to assist you. An agent that can reach into your mailbox and pull out data, or have a shared mailbox or a mailbox of its own that it can reach into, that you can message via Teams and get it to join into a conversation, not just jumping into it and going, hey, give me the latest information. It can actually be proactively running to find and do work for you while you're sleeping, because it's already been predefined about what it needs to do and things are ready for you in the morning. But with all of that, the challenge becomes security and trust. How do we work through that? And again, this has been a big part Microsoft has been working on. And if we've got the time, I want to try and get into some of the details around the observability stack that Microsoft announced as well. It excites me. I think that makes me weird. Not many people are excited by observability, but I've had to build AI agents, and I know how crucial it is, particularly as we start to let these agents do more themselves, being able to actually say why they did what they did and have that traceability is a really critical thing on the way through. You may have also heard that at Build, Microsoft announced 7 new AI models. Now, these are all brand new models that Microsoft has trained from the ground up. They're leveraging learnings, but they're not leveraging the GPT OpenAI models. They are brand new ones from there. And a lot of the excitement for this comes not so much because the performance is there yet. I mean, from reports, the performance is pretty good. So Transcribe is 5 times faster than the competition from that. The reasoning model, Thinking 1, was preferred in many blind tests over Sonnet 4.6. Now, that's a couple of revisions old, and that's Sonnet, not Opus. But for a first release of a model, that's a good starting point. There's a voice model for speech generation. So you've got the speech to text and now the text to speech capability, and a coding one that has been designed very specifically to work with GitHub Copilot. So one of the comments I saw in regards to that is it actually performs much better through GitHub Copilot because it's been trained on the way that GitHub Copilot works. And so having that synergy in a similar way to, you hear a lot of reports that the Claude models work better through Claude Code. Well, we might see this. Now, the Code 1 Flash is, again, not a frontier or a top level model. It's very similar to the Claude Haiku models, but it's significantly cheaper. And so these are some advantages that are starting to come out. But one of the other pieces that was a key foundation of this is these are models that Microsoft is encouraging and making it very easy for you to customize, to train on top of with your own data. And the best thing, what that will do is that will give you far better results for cheaper, because you can take that model, train it on your specific data, therefore get a smaller model that's yours to use rather than having to use a much bigger model at a higher token cost. Takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of effort. This is what machine learning models have done for many years, is you take a base model and you train it on your specific data set. Microsoft now makes that easy to do through Foundry as well. Yeah.
Two flashes, voice and voice flash. What's voice?
So Voice Flash is just a faster version, so a smaller model size. So same with both the image and the voice. So again, they become trade-offs. Is your bigger model is going to give you better performance at a higher token cost and will tend to be slower. The faster models are smaller models. They will give you nearly as good quality, but at a lower cost and at a quicker pace. So all of these, it's always worth checking and trying them out and seeing what suits your use case. And again, that's something else that Microsoft has announced as part of the Foundry release. One of the other big things was the announcement of IQ, the IQ suite going GA. Now, IQ's probably been mentioned on the way through. Apologies if I do repeat what anybody has said on the way through. I wasn't here to hear it as my defense. And so within the IQ suite, what this is a way of, again, Microsoft leveraging the investment that people already have into the Microsoft suite and making them easy for your agents to take advantage of. So there are 4 IQs that were announced. One of them is brand new. So we have Work IQ, which is the interface into your Microsoft 365 data. So this is being able to get your agent to reach in and get your Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, any of that Microsoft 365 data, your Graph API, to reach in. The advantage of it is you don't have to go and code this up all yourself. Could you do all of this? Absolutely, you can. The APIs are all there. But with the IQ system, Microsoft makes it really easy to hand over the authentication process to it. It will take care of the on behalf of flow so that all of the data out of Work IQ is grounded in the context of what the agent has access to. And so if that's operating in the context of a user, it's only the data that user has access to. If it's operating in the context of an agent itself, it will only be what data you give the agent access to. And so this is just leveraging Entra ID and permissions that we're already used to using, but it makes it really easy to get hold of it. Fabric IQ is for doing the same for your corporate data. As you start, if organizations adopt Fabric and the data is there in your OneLake, Fabric IQ makes reaching into that really, really simple. And particularly with the release of ontologies, or the announcement of that in preview, that's going to allow you to define a structure to your data that an agent can then reach in, understand at a semantic level, what does this column mean? And therefore make that far more useful to your agents. Foundry IQ is going to do the same thing for then unstructured data that you might have. So this is not your SharePoint files. This is not your corporate data that is in Fabric, but this might be some supplier documents. So you store it in a blob storage account and you need to get access into it. This will give the ability to work over through things like content understanding, to load a PDF document, which may not be particularly machine readable, but for the content understanding system to iterate over the document, generate out of that a JSON format. Let's say you've got a table of, and one of the examples they use, fiber connectivity. What's connected to where with what settings, and it's just a table that a human can look at and understand, but a machine's going to look at that and go, what is it? Content understanding starts to bring meaning to that, and that can be surfaced through Foundry IQ. And then the new WebIQ, which is Bing by any other name, is the ability to get out and reach out into websites, but again, in a format that the agents are much easier for them to understand. But with the IQ system, what it allows us to also do is box what is accessible. So we don't have to necessarily give a full web search through WebIQ. You can limit that down to maybe you've got publicly available information on your website. Through WebIQ, you surface that document, those documents or those FAQs or whatever that publicly accessible information is from a web format into an agent-specific format so that you can ground your agents in specific data rather than just a general web search. And this leads us into Foundry and some of the announcements out of Foundry. The key one that excites me quite a lot is the hosted agent concept. So when Foundry first came out, the key agents that you could create are what are now being called prompt agents. These are just simple agents, which in a lot of situations is all an organization needs. If you can provide your set of tools through the IQ system or other MCP servers or skills, and you can provide a prompt for what you want to do, a prompt agent is sufficient for what you need to do. But there are many situations where you actually need to get in and customize the logic. You need to provide code-based tools to do things. You want to do a multi-orchestration system where you have coordinators and sub-agents, and therefore the ability to hand off from there. You can do that to a point with the prompt agents, but sometimes you need a depth of functionality, and so you need a code-based agent. But where are you going to run that? Because the problem is in a lot of situations, and we feel this in New Zealand being a much smaller market a lot of times, a lot of the solutions that get proposed are expensive. When you think of needing to run, for example, a premium app service, for a lot of organizations, for a lot of what we want to do, that's more cost and overhead than we need. But Foundry hosted service, the hosted agent service is built on the same framework as the Flex consumption apps. So what this means is we have sub-second start time for your agent. We have scale to zero for your agent. And we have consumption-based billing for your agent. What that simply means is you only pay for what you use when you use it. You also then get the near infinite scalability that comes from the cloud. And that's all just packaged out of the box for you. You push a Docker container up and that will run for you, along with all the management that comes within Foundry. I mentioned already Agent Framework going GA. So this is Microsoft's core agent framework, a melding of about 4 or 5 different technologies. It's one of the first times I think Microsoft has joined technologies rather than splitting them or creating new ones. So let's celebrate that for a fact as a starting point. And then I mentioned here the frontier tuning, so that ability to tune your model on your own data. And then Fireworks AI. So Fireworks, as I understand it, is a technology for running and deploying open weight models that you can reach out, similar to Hugging Face, but slightly different from there. That's now natively integrated into Foundry for you to be able to run those open weight models as well that maybe aren't already available, and all the tuning that can come from doing that. Did you have a question, Sinan?
Say something about
Yeah.
Agent Framework. On next Wednesday, DSR will run a session on .NET User Group about Microsoft Agent Framework. So if you guys don't have any experience, bring your laptop and we will do some hands-on session. But yeah, there will be like a really nice session about it.
So for those on the call, Wednesday night, the .NET User Group is going to go through Agent Framework. Bring your laptop, register via the Meetup group if you're not already registered for that one as well. Yeah.
This is being shared,
The
slide deck.
It's on the user group that
Oh, it is. So the
it's going to be there at least.
links will be live.
Yeah, the links will be live. These are all links straight out of the build sessions as well. But yes, if we're going to share this, those links will be live from there as well. Yeah, it's one that I've got to look into a little bit more deeply as well to understand it a bit more. Yep, nice. And then the last piece to think about is how do we actually govern these agents? I was chatting to an architect at an organisation just down in Wellington, and they are getting right into Copilot Studio. And so they've got thousands of agents that their team have started to create. but his biggest concern now is how do we know what's there? How do we find the ones that people are using, and how do we start making them available to other people and not ending up in a situation with, I'm sure we've all heard about it, that one guy who created that one Access database that still lives on in your organization today, even though he left 25 years ago, and everyone is really afraid to touch it. We don't want to get into that scenario. And so for that, Microsoft is bringing in Agent 365 from there. And what this allows the compliance teams to do is get a, first of all, holistic view of the agents that are available, who's using them, what's going on with them. That registry surfaces them so that they can then have policy applied to them about what they can and can't do. And it just gives you that layer of control over those agents that you might not have otherwise. Another integration or an announcement that came out is Microsoft following Apple. At WWDC last year, Apple announced their Apple containers, which are small, lightweight VMs that can run on the Apple Silicon. Microsoft now in with Windows has the Microsoft Execution Container, which is again that lightweight VM concept that runs on your machine for isolation. As part of that, what that is enabling is things like, and plug for Monday night with the GitHub user group, for those that want to come along for that, the fact that we can now sandbox our agents inside GitHub Copilot, which means that therefore they can't reach out and do rm -rf/, for example. It was great fun watching one of the presenters today turn on YOLO mode and autopilot, and we're sitting there watching as it goes off to download and start installing Python 3.12 on his Windows machine. And this is the sort of thing that these containerization environments will help with for that there. And then the M- security system. So this is Microsoft from their research. This is a preview feature. It's a security system that Microsoft has been developing internally. M- is the code name. The aim of this is to work out how can we start looking into these agents, regardless of the language, and start looking for potential security vulnerabilities, what might be going on in terms of that. So that's something that's exciting to be seeing from there. Super high level view on that. As I said, I did want to do a really quick demo before I get run out of everything. And so what I want to do is take us across to the Foundry portal. So what we have here is one of the announcements was Toolbox going GA, nearly going GA for that. So within Foundry, we can create a list of tools. These are primarily MCP servers that are exposed automatically. But who here has run into the problem where they've suddenly realized that they have no context for an agent because it's all taken up by MCP servers? Anyone who's used the GitHub MCP server should be familiar with that problem. The issue is that they come into context. The bigger your context, the more it costs, the longer it takes for it to run. But how do we take something like the GitHub MCP server, make it available for only the pieces that we need? This is where toolboxes come into play. So a toolbox in Foundry is just, like it sounds, a collection of tools that we can provide, and then we have a single endpoint we give to our agent. So it's one MCP server that it has to think about, and everything else is delegated out to the toolbox. We can then, in that toolbox, pick and choose what tools we want to make available from the tool set. So in this case here, maybe we reach out to GitHub. We also need to reach out to Teams. So we leverage the WorkIQ integration to be able to do that. But we don't have to put up with the whole, here is everything. Within my toolbox, I can specify which of the tools from the MCP server we will make available. So if you're used to writing an agent and only selecting specific tools, Toolbox will allow that control at actually the toolbox level rather than having to think about it at the agent level. This is great for letting developers go and consume without running into issues. Here's a read-only endpoint, go nuts, do what you want on the read-only endpoint. You can't shoot yourself in the foot because there is not a single write capability available to you in that endpoint that we've given you. But the other advantage that now comes, and this is a new preview here, is this tool search functionality. So instead of now just splatting every single tool into the context window, one tool fundamentally turns up, search. I want to use a tool. what tools have you got available for me? Here's the tool that you can use. Now you can call that tool and use it. A little bit more back and forth with the LLM, but means that your context window is much, much smaller. There's not all of this extra work and all of this extra information in the context. So Toolbox is a great part of Foundry. One of the other things I talked about, and I think was mentioned earlier, might have been mentioned earlier, is about the claw-like agents. These agents that are always able to run. And I mentioned the fact of being able to set up agents to be able to do things on a schedule. Welcome to routines, where you can set up your agent to fire off at specific times. And so in here, we pick our agent, we set a prompt, we set a trigger, and let it go. And on that schedule, it will go and it will perform the task that you've asked it to perform, and away it can go. We can integrate this then into Teams or wherever we want to for summary information to come back through from there. You could also hook these obviously into an event-driven workflow. You end up with an event that triggers an agent, and away it goes from there. But this is one of the pieces that really I really like, because as I mentioned in terms of the challenge that we have about understanding what went on. So this here is the new trace view. This gives us the details of what has gone on inside our agent. You can build this in any framework. This is open standards through OpenTelemetry. Microsoft has done a lot of work with OpenTelemetry over the past 12 months to get standardized conventions for Gen AI tooling. You get this for free out of the box with Microsoft Agent Framework. Yeah. So the Microsoft tooling will give you these OTel format traces. Submit that into your log analytics workspace, connect that to Foundry, bang, here is your information that can see what you can drill in and see what has taken the time. Here's my interaction back and forth. Here's the chat. Here's the tool calls that I've used. Let me have a look and see the data that was used, what came, what went from there. And if something's not gone right, we can go down here, and I'll just go 8 times for benefit. I can look over and see the whole user view in terms of all the information, or I can hit play and get a moment by moment replay of the full conversation and interaction that went on with that agent. So in terms of troubleshooting, this is here out of the box for you with Agent Framework and Prompt Agents. Yeah.
That head spinning out here, but does that mean that it could be saved, created a log, use that log then to recreate another agent, but with tweaks that you've edited?
Hold that thought.
Sorry.
No, that's not. It's an excellent question, but I'm intentionally saying hold that thought, because from that data, now that we've got all of this data from here, who knows about the concept of evaluations for an agent? Yeah, so this is where we run it through a synthetic set of tests. We give it a question, we get its response, compare that to what we think it should be. Is anybody running agents in production at the moment? Or close to? No. One of the things that we find when we talk to people is they're starting to get agents into production. It's like, fantastic, what's your evaluation strategy? And so Microsoft now has made that really, really simple. If I come across here, there is now tooling in the AZD command line to automatically generate some sample evaluations for you. So to your question, David, it will go through and have a look at the traces for your agent. What interactions have gone on with this agent? Let me generate some sample evaluations off the bat that we can use to start building evaluations. From that there, so out of the box in the evaluations, there are a whole stack of potential evaluations that can be used. Customer satisfaction, Rouge scores, F1 scores, groundedness, fluency. We can build custom ones here, which is either based off code or off an LLM as a judge. And one of the new things that's come out is this custom rubric type, where we take a collection of them, bring them together, and use them to give an overall score from here. Feed that into the evaluations that we've prepared in advance. Now you've got a really good way of being able to actually evaluate all of your interactions that are going on. You can start to think about, oh, what change, if I tweak the prompt, what does that do? If I change model, what does that do? But that takes time and effort. And we don't like time and effort these days, do we? And so what Microsoft has also announced inside AZD is an optimization agent. So now that you've built those evaluators, now that you've got all of that tracing, you can then ask the optimization agent to go away and make recommendations. It will take, what we do in this is we come here and we change the weighting of our dimensions, or if we find that the quality is low on our evaluations from these here, and then we say, right, from this optimize, and it is literally pick my agent from here. I've already got the evaluation configuration created because we did the evaluation first. Here's my prompt file. What skills have I provided? What tools have I provided? Do I want to change what model we're targeting? Thinks for a moment. What model am I going to use to do all of this work? And I press that and it will go away and it will generate 5 to 6 candidates. It will run them through that evaluation suite and it will come back with this is my recommendation on the changes that you should make to your agent, be it the prompt, be it the tool descriptions, be it the skills, or be it based on which model you should be using. And it will tell you what the improvement percentage is on that evaluation score. And then you, with one command, you can take that, promote that to production, and you have now an improved agent. So this is where we're starting to head towards this self-generation of an agent, the self-improvement in terms of that, which is going to make life easier for us. We still want to be in the loop. We still want to be reviewing and approving. But if a lot of this work in the background can be done for us, then our job becomes, yes, let me review that. Yes, let me approve that. And away we go from there. So that was all that I kind of had in terms of that side of things. Any other questions or anything before we look to finish up? Yeah.
Especially in future, and it's necessary to management how to. It's very useful to management agents as a platform.
Mhm.
Is it? Yes.
So I'm not, ask the question again, please.
Yes, and this the AI agent as the platform managed by SRE in future.
Yep.
I think it's very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because that observability to see if something's going wrong, let me drill into, and that's one thing that I haven't got set up. But in the trace view, if I had a post interaction evaluation set up, that when I drill into that trace, I'll actually see the evaluation results in there as well. So at the end of an interaction, we can then run that through that evaluation rubric and see, did this meet the requirements of it? Surface up any situations where it doesn't. That allows me to drill in. So from an SRE perspective, to go, these are the ones that failed. Let me get in and actually see what went on. Where did this go off the rails? Such a critical thing in terms of that. But what the next step is probably going to be, and this is probably, I can't speak for anything. This is just where I see things going. Microsoft have the SRE agent inside of Azure, which will help you trigger off alerts to go and investigate code issues and performance issues inside your Azure estate. That could easily be extended to your agents in Foundry at some point, and then allow you to drill into that detail. And actually, the agent starts going off, and there's a problem. Now we start getting feedback automatically of, hey, we recommend that you go and do this, and that's going to make your job even easier, because you don't have to do all of the legwork to get in to understand it. That's been done for you. Now you can do the thinking work and the decision making. Mm-hmm.
And follow it. It's very hard for us because it has not detailed documentation.
Yeah.
The skill and ability for senior SI maybe happens 2 or 3.
Yep. Yeah, and your comment is correct. The comment is looking at using Work IQ or the IQ's Fabric and Foundry IQ particularly, and lacking in documentation. Welcome to Microsoft. The documentation is often lagging behind in terms of a lot of those things, and it is sometimes difficult to understand what's going on from there in terms of that. And that is a case that's we're going through. I mean, even this demo that I was using earlier today that I'm showing here was pre-canned from Microsoft, and I still had to work through stuff. And even now, parts of it aren't working properly. That's with code that they demonstrated on stage at Build 3 weeks ago. So, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is all of this is brand new from there. So it will take time for it to bed down, for us to understand what are the best ways to do all of this. But it's about starting to think about what this is going to mean and how this is going to work from there.
I think getting your hands dirty is actually worth it, because you're so many problems, and then when the fixes come along, go, oh, I know how to do this.
Yeah. Take the opportunity to start learning now. Any other questions? Anything online that I can't see quite from there? Just comments. M Dash is a great name and so forth. Yeah. Cool. Well, I thank you very much. I'll hand it back over to Sinan, I think, or